The story of Joseph's coat. In the gentle warmth of an ancient afternoon, when the sun painted the hills of Canaan in hues of gold and amber, there lived a father named Jacob who had 12 sons. Among these sons was Joseph, a young man with eyes that sparkled like morning dew and a heart as pure as spring water. Jacob loved all his children dearly, but Joseph held a special place in his heart, for the boy reminded him of his beloved Rachel who had passed into heavenly rest. As the soft winds carried the scent of wildflowers across the pastoral landscapes, Jacob pondered how he might show his deep affection for Joseph. His thoughts turned to the finest wools and most delicate threads that merchants brought from distant lands, carried on camel caravans that wound their way through desert paths like rivers of silk and spice. In the quiet of evening, when the first stars began to flicker like distant candles in the velvet sky, Jacob commissioned the creation of a magnificent coat. This was no ordinary garment, but a masterwork of color and craft. The threads were dyed in shades that mimicked the beauty of creation itself. From the deep blue of twilight skies to the rich purple of mountain wildflowers. From the warm gold of sunset to the soft green of spring grass. The making of this coat was itself a meditation, a labor of love that took many peaceful days. Each stitch was placed with careful intention. Every panel selected and arranged like pieces of a beautiful puzzle. The sleeves were long and flowing, the fabric soft as cloud whispers against the skin. When light touched the surface, it seemed to dance and play among the colors like sunlight on gentle waters. As the coat took shape beneath skilled hands, it became more than mere clothing. It was becoming a story woven in thread, a father's love made visible in every carefully chosen way and pattern. The colors spoke of dreams and possibilities, of favor and future promise, of a father's hopes for his cherished son. In the serene moments of creation, none could have known how this gift of love would set in motion events that would unfold like a tapestry across many years. But for now, in this gentle time of making, there was only the quiet joy of crafting something beautiful for someone beloved. When the coat was finally complete, Jacob presented it to Joseph in the soft light of morning, when dew still sparkled on the grass like scattered diamonds. The young man received this precious gift with wonder in his eyes, sliding his arms into sleeves that seemed to hold all the colors of dawn. The coat settled around his shoulders like an embrace, as though it had been waiting just for him. His brothers watched from the shadows of their tents, their hearts growing heavy with feelings they could not quite name. The coat seemed to catch every ray of sunlight, drawing all eyes to Joseph as he moved through their daily tasks. As he tended the flocks, the colors rippled like wind across summer meadows, making him stand out among them like a rare flower in a field of wheat. In those days, Joseph began to dream dreams that whispered of future things. These dreams floated through his sleep like leaves on a gentle stream, full of meaning yet mysterious as morning mist. In one such dream, he saw sheaves of wheat in a golden field, swaying in a peaceful breeze. His own sheaf stood tall, while those of his brothers bowed low. as though in gentle reverence. In another dream, soft as starlight, he saw the sun, moon, and 11 stars making graceful obeisance to him. These dreams settled in his heart like seeds in fertile soil, and in his youthful innocence, he shared them with his family as naturally as sharing bread at their evening meal. His father listened thoughtfully to these dreams, holding them in his heart like precious stones, turning them over in quiet contemplation. Even as he gently cautioned Joseph about sharing such visions, Jacob wondered at their meaning, letting them rest in his mind like evening prayers. But for his brothers, each word Joseph spoke was like another thread woven into a tapestry of resentment. The beautiful coat became to them a symbol of their father's uneven love, its color seeming to mock their simpler garments. Their feelings grew like shadows as the sun sets, gradually darkening their hearts. Yet Joseph continued in his innocent ways, wrapped in his father's love like the coat he wore, his dreams floating through his days like clouds across a summer sky. He moved through their world with a grace that seemed to come from somewhere beyond their understanding, as though he walked in two worlds at once. In the rhythm of their pastoral life, days flowed like gentle streams into weeks. The brothers would take their father's flocks to distant pastures, seeking fresh grass and clear waters. One peaceful morning, Jacob asked Joseph to journey to check on his brothers, to bring word of their welfare back to their father's anxious heart. Joseph set out on his journey, the coat catching the morning light like a beacon. He walked through valleys where wildflowers nodded in the breeze, over hills where birds sang their endless songs to the sky. The coat wrapped around him like a father's blessing, protecting him from the cool morning air as he searched for his brothers. When at last he spotted them in the distance, their figures small against the vast landscape, his heart lifted like a dove rising into flight. But his brothers saw him differently. From afar, the colors of his coat seemed to dance in the sunlight, announcing his approach like a herald's call. Their hearts grew cold at the sight, like stones in deep water. In the quiet moment before Joseph reached them, the brothers spoke among themselves in low voices that rustled like dry grass in the wind. Their words carried the weight of all their stored hurts, their accumulated jealousies. The dreams Joseph had shared floated back to them like autumn leaves on a dark pool. They saw him drawing near, this dreamer in his beautiful coat, walking with the easy grace of one who knows he is loved. The sight of him stirred their deepest feelings, like a wind disturbing still waters. In that moment, their hearts hardened like clay in the sun, and they made plans that would change all their lives. With movements as smooth as shadows lengthening at sunset, they surrounded Joseph. Their hands reached out, not in greeting but in grievance. The beautiful coat, this symbol of their father's special love, was pulled from Joseph's shoulders like petals torn from a flower. The colors that had danced so joyfully in the sunlight now lay still and silent in the dust. The brothers lifted Joseph with hands that had grown strong from tending sheep and lowered him into an empty cistern. The walls of the cistern rose around him like the walls of a dream from which he could not wake. Above, the sky was a perfect circle of blue, as distant as his father's love now seemed. As Joseph sat in the cool shadows of the cistern, time seemed to slow like honey dripping from a comb. The circle of sky above him remained constant, a reminder of heaven's watchful eye. Though fear flickered in his heart like a candle in the wind, something deeper than understanding told him that this was not the end of his story. While his brothers sat to break bread, their meal tasting of ashes in their mouths, a caravan appeared on the horizon like a string of pearls against the desert sand. Merchants from distant Midian, their camels swaying like ships on a dusty sea, approached with their wares of spice and balm and myrrh. Judah, whose heart had been wrestling like Jacob with an angel, spoke words that would alter the course of their shared story. Instead of leaving their brother in the cistern, they would sell him to these travelers. In this way, they told themselves, his blood would not be on their hands, and his dreams would fade like mist in morning sun. Silver coins passed from hand to hand, gleaming dully in the afternoon light. Joseph was lifted from the cistern, his feet touching solid ground once more, only to be led away on a path he had never chosen. The caravan moved on like a dream across the landscape, bearing him toward an unknown future in Egypt. The brothers took the beautiful coat, this garment of many colors that had caused such strife, and dipped it in the blood of a young goat. The rich dyes merged with the darker stain, turning its rainbow hues to shadows. When they brought it to their father, the sight of it fell upon Jacob's heart like night falling on a garden. Jacob's grief flowed like a river through their household. He wore the rough garments of mourning, his joy seeming to fade like colors washing away in rain. Yet even in this valley of sorrow, unseen threads of divine purpose were being woven into a tapestry larger than any could imagine. Meanwhile, Joseph journeyed south with the merchants, the desert stars his only familiar companions. Each evening, as the caravan settled into its rest, he would look up at those same stars his father could see, finding comfort in their steady light. Though his coat of many colors was gone, he wrapped himself in the memory of his father's love, like a cloak that could never be taken away. In Egypt, that ancient land where pyramids rose like mountains made by human hands, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, a high official in Pharaoh's court. Like a seed planted in foreign soil, Joseph began to put down new roots, his natural abilities flourishing like palm trees by the Nile. In Potiphar's household, Joseph moved with the same quiet grace that had marked his days in Canaan. His work was like water flowing to its proper place. Everything he touched seemed blessed with success. The years passed like clouds across the Egyptian sky, and Joseph grew from a boy into a man of wisdom and dignity. Yet even here, in this place of growing peace, another storm was brewing like distant thunder. Potiphar's wife, whose heart burned with improper desires, set her eyes upon Joseph. Her advances were like thorns hidden among rose petals. But Joseph remained true to his principles, as steady as the North Star. When false accusations fell from her lips like poison drops, Joseph found himself cast into Pharaoh's prison. The stone walls rose around him much like the cistern had years before. But this time Joseph carried with him the wisdom earned through suffering, like a lamp that illuminates dark places. Even in the prison, Joseph's light could not be dimmed, like a flower pushing through cracks in stone. His gift for understanding dreams found its purpose. He interpreted the dreams of his fellow prisoners with gentle wisdom, his words falling like soft rain on thirsty ground. Word of Joseph's gift eventually reached Pharaoh himself, who was troubled by dreams that swirled through his sleep like wind-blown sand. Dreams of 7 fat cows, followed by 7 lean ones, of 7 full heads of grain and 7 withered ones, haunted his nights like persistent shadows. When Joseph was brought before Pharaoh, he stood with quiet confidence, wrapped not in a coat of many colors, but in the invisible garment of divine wisdom. His interpretation flowed like clear water, speaking of 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, and offering counsel as practical as it was wise. Pharaoh, recognizing the light of divine wisdom that seemed to shine from Joseph like the morning sun on the Nile, elevated him to a position second only to himself. The shepherd boy in his coat of many colors had become a shepherd of nations, guided by the same steady hand that had watched over him in the cistern and prison. During the 7 years of plenty, Joseph guided Egypt like a careful gardener tends his plants. Grain was stored in great abundance, like sand upon the seashore, until the storehouses swelled with the harvest of good years. When the famine came creeping across the land like an evening shadow, Egypt alone had bread. And so it came to pass that Joseph's brothers, driven by hunger that gnawed at their lands like a desert wind, came to Egypt seeking grain. They bowed before him, not recognizing in this powerful Egyptian lord the brother they had sold so many years ago. Like seeds planted long ago finally bearing fruit, Joseph's childhood dreams had become reality. In those moments of recognition that followed, like dawn breaking slowly over the horizon, Joseph's heart melted with forgiveness as warm as summer rain. The tears that fell from his eyes were like precious jewels, each one carrying years of stored emotion. His words of reconciliation flowed like honey, sweet with love rather than bitter with revenge. When Joseph finally revealed himself to his brothers, his voice gentle as a father comforting his children, he spoke of divine purpose. The coat of many colors that had once caused such strife had been but the beginning of a journey as vast as the starry sky. What his brothers had meant for harm, a greater wisdom had turned to blessing, like water flowing through desert places to create gardens of life. Jacob, hearing that his beloved son lived, felt joy rise in his heart like sap rising in spring branches. The journey to Egypt was like a dream from which he never wished to wake. When father and son embraced at last, it was as though all the colors of that long-ago coat had returned, painted now across the canvas of their restored relationship. In the end, the story of Joseph becomes a gentle reminder that our lives are like threads in a vast tapestry. What seems at first a discord of clashing colors may reveal itself in time to be part of a greater pattern. as beautiful as any coat of many colors. The divine artist weaves our joys and sorrows, our triumphs and trials, into something far more magnificent than we could imagine. As we rest in this knowledge, like children safe in a father's embrace, we can trust that our own stories, however complex or challenging they may seem, are being woven with the same patient love.